Hey everybody, welcome to the Book Leads Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. I'm your series host in this series about getting to the books that have impacted the lives and the work, the business endeavors of the people in my network. So these are great leads, my guests, to those books that have made the most difference to them, whether it is their own book of that or that of somebody else's. And my guest today is Saahil Mehta. And Saahil is a global entrepreneur, author, and transformation coach who helps leaders declutter their lives to unlock clarity, focus, and fulfillment. With over 20 years of experience building businesses across 3 continents, Saahil brings a rich perspective to conversations about leadership and personal evolution. His book, Break Free, explores how letting go of physical, emotional, and digital clutter can lead to profound breakthroughs in both life and work. As a speaker and coach, he blends ancient wisdom with modern strategy to guide high achievers towards sustainable success. And Sahil's journey from scaling companies to summiting mountains offers powerful lessons on resilience, intentional living, and redefining what it means to lead. He's passionate about helping align ambition with well-being and believes that true transformation begins with subtraction, not addition. His insights resonate deeply with those seeking purpose-driven leadership and personal reinvention. Sahil, thank you so much for joining me.
It's a pleasure to be here, John.
I can't wait to dive into this because there's so many components in your bio that I just read that just stand out as powerful. Obviously, we craft these bios to kind of give the best impression, but obviously, in most cases, people back them up completely. But there's just so many powerful keywords here that stand out to me. Okay, let me just see. Where was it that I was like, okay. Just profound breakthroughs, ancient wisdom, mixing it with modern strategy, working with high achievers towards sustainable success, scaling companies, summiting mountains. So I'm glad we're going to dive into this conversation. First question is always, I read the bio, lots of great information in there. Who are you today? Can you provide some breakdown or some information on the work that you do in the day-to-day with your clients? What does that look like so that we can understand who's presenting their book to us?
Absolutely, John. Today, if I look at what my life looks like, I'm an entrepreneur. I run 4 different businesses. The one where I'm spending most of my time is in the coaching and writing space. This is the one that actually brings me the most fulfillment. It's the one where I'm able to serve and use whatever I've learned from my own experience as well as the experience from amazing individuals that I've come across, and share that with folks who are looking for a sustainable, successful future. So what that means is, for my other businesses, I've encouraged people to step up. I've empowered them, given them the training, delegate, etc. Because rather than working in the business, which is what I was doing, which was ultimately, and just to take a step back, my father was kind of my partner. So we used to share responsibility. And once he passed away, everything came on my plate. And that's when I realized I can't do all 4. I can't run everything and spend time with family and enjoy my hobbies and go to the mountains, because I'll just burn out.
Yeah.
And so it encouraged me to look at my life and say, what do you love doing? And what is something that only you can do in the company? And then I made a list, and then everything else I said, it needs to be done by someone else. And so that, again, it pushed me to empower and delegate to others. So now I'm working more at a strategic level in the other companies, and I've got a phenomenal team. In fact, the team were always phenomenal. I just didn't give them the opportunity to thrive because I was involved in too many decisions. But I realized how amazing the team are, which I'm just so grateful for. And that then allows me to focus on being a transformational stroke success coach with people who really want a sustainable, successful future. And the key word is sustainable, because you might get successful by making certain sacrifices today, but that doesn't mean you can continue to make those sacrifices, because when you say yes to certain things, you're saying no to something else. So you might say, oh, I just will focus on my work and health is going to take a back seat. Perhaps family takes a back seat, and it's temporary. But quickly that temporary becomes permanent.
So yeah, that was one of the key phrases that stood out to me. So just jumping in right here at this moment, what does that look like in terms of when you work with somebody, the sustainable part? What does that follow up look like? What is that prescription guidance that you provide to your clients for in terms of sustainability? What does that look like?
Yeah. So I'm just going to give a little bit of background on that. In the mountaineering world, we have something called the Seven Summits, which is the tallest mountain on each continent. And when you summit all of them, when you conquer all of them, it's like you've conquered the world, right? Metaphorically speaking. And it got me thinking. I said, what about my own internal seven summits? So what are the seven most important things in my life right now at this phase of life? If I asked most people what are three, they usually come up with some variation of health, wealth, and relationships. That's easy. I mean, 80% of the people will probably say those three. But if I ask you to think of seven, you have to reflect. You have to go in your head and go, what else is actually important for me? Three came quickly, but the next four, maybe not. And so the leaders I work with, they start to reflect on their life and start to figure out what is actually really important for them. So then they discover what these seven mountains are that they wish to climb. And these seven summits are their definition of success. It's not the definition that society gave you, your parents gave you, school gave you, friends gave you, social media gave you, which I find a little odd because most people have this similar definition of success, yet we are all so unique and different, right? So this really allows them to define what success means to them. No influence of other people. It's what they believe it is. Once they've defined that, I asked them, I said, listen, out of these seven mountains, it's like seven balls. You're juggling them all the time. Mm-hmm. Every day you're juggling them. Now, some might be a higher priority, some might be a lower priority. We go through that. But we also identify which are the ones that you can afford to drop and which ones are the ones you can't afford to drop. So if a ball is made of crystal and you drop it, boom, it's thousands of pieces. If it's a rubber ball, it's going to bounce back. So if I give an example, health, for example, for me is a crystal ball. If you keep ignoring it, at some point you might get some situation occur where you're on medication for life or something chronic. Mm-hmm. Now, to turn that around is very difficult. So for me, that ball has shattered because now, if I look at even my own mother, she didn't take such good care of her health. She had a heart attack. Since then, she's been taking amazing care of her health. But even with all of that, she's still now on medication for life. That doesn't go away. Whereas finances, for example, is a rubber ball. We've all heard of, key figures, some famous ones that come up in the news often. They've lost everything and then they've bounced back up. So it is a rubber ball. So once they have the priorities of the seven, once they know which ones they can afford to drop and which ones they can't, I then ask them, when you come to a crossroad where you have to make a major decision in your life, what is the net effect on the seven mountains? And this is very important because a lot of the leaders I work with, including myself as a business owner of multiple businesses, I used to look at the growth of the company or the finances, and I'd get excited and I'd say, yeah, I'm going to say yes to this. But I didn't realize by saying yes to this, what was I saying no to? And if the net effect of the seven mountains is positive, great, go for it. If it's not, it means that you're not going to drop some of the crystal balls, go for it. If it's something temporary where you're being honest with yourself that I have to sacrifice for a short period of time to make it happen, go for it. But if the net effect is negative, if what you think is temporary is going to become a permanent change in your lifestyle that doesn't take you in the direction you want based on your definition of success, then perhaps you need to rethink that decision.
Sahil, what are some examples, aside from the common three that typically people would respond, whether it's career, money, relationships, what are some other ones? Maybe they're unique to whoever you're speaking to at the time. But what are some examples of those other peaks that others mention that aren't commonly heard, I guess?
Yeah. What I'm seeing more and more in today's world, and perhaps it's to do with the challenges of mental wellness across the globe, I'm seeing fun and recreation or joy or some version of that becoming one of the seven. I'm also seeing personal development. I'm seeing community service, or just serving in general. So it could be charitable contributions or just serving in your local community, whatever that might be. So these are three that I'm starting to see more of, which is great because I do believe that some of those are the need of the hour. When it was just focused on work, 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 and doesn't matter what I'm giving up in the process, it's led to some difficulties for a lot of people. And so now they're focusing on these other areas which are bringing joy and happiness back in their life. And you know what I've seen with these people? When they started to focus on that, they became a better version of themselves.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
when you're the happier John, I think I'm going to enjoy in being in your company versus an anxious John.
absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, I could tell you for a fact. Absolutely. When you're taking care of yourself, whether you're working out, whether you're hanging out with family, whether you're getting that feeling of helping your community, I mentioned it before and somebody mocked the word that I said, but there is an effervescence to you when you have this energy and it just ripples into all your environment. So I would like to think all these seven peaks, obviously, they don't just benefit you, but they benefit everybody in your circles, and hopefully it kind of perpetuates itself. It's a symbiotic relationship of giving great energy out, getting great energy, and so on and so forth. So Sahil, for you, what are the areas that your businesses are in, just to kind of get a little bit more background on you?
Sure. So the one that you already know, which I spoke about, which is the coaching and writing, right? I'm working on my second book right now, actually, which I'm co-authoring with Dr. Marshall Goldsmith. So really excited about that. My other businesses are one in real estate. I own and manage specifically retail shops. So I don't run the retail operations, but I own the units, and it's in one area only. So it's hyper niched. I always find when you really hyper niche, then that's where you can succeed because you're known for being a specialist in that space.
Yeah.
And I kind of do that in all my businesses. One is in hospitality. We work with independent hotels, so not the big groups like the Marriotts or the Hiltons, uh, or it's more the one hotel or a small group in a region, but we work with the hotels around the world, and we enable them to distribute their room inventory across all electronic platforms in a efficient way so that they can maximize their room revenue. And then the fourth business is I'm in the diamond trading business. And so that is something again where it covers a lot, but we're very, again, hyper niched, and we only work with a certain type of clientele who they know whenever they think of X, they think of us because they know that they're the specialists in that area. So that's what I've been a big believer of, is just, don't try to be the best at everything. Be the best at one thing, but then everyone knows you for that. And then that's when the referrals come in. That's when people keep coming back to you for that. And it just makes the sales process so much easier.
Sahil, to understand how you got here to what you shared with us, can you give me a sense of how you started down this path? Typically, I like to start with my guests maybe around high school age as they're going into their university, college, or the workforce. What did that look like from then to now? Just to kind of get a sense of what built the person and the business
Yeah.
person we see in front of us.
So if from school, I went to university in London where I studied and I did my bachelor's and master's in electronic and electrical engineering. And it's kind of ironic because if you look at my origin is from India, and if you look at the Indian diaspora, a lot of parents will tell their kids become an engineer or become a doctor. I-
Yeah,
in
yeah,
my case,
yeah.
my parents didn't tell me anything. They just said do what you like. I actually was I loved gadgets. I'm a gadget freak. At least I was.
So you wanted to do it anyway.
They didn't tell me. I decided that I wanted to do it. So it's kind of funny, but I did end up in engineering anyway. So I did electronic and electrical engineering. I graduated when? This was 2001. That was kind of around the dot-com bust. So it wasn't that great in the job market. What I found out from some of my seniors is investment banks love engineers. So I started to apply to investment banks. And at that time, my focus was primarily get rich, right? Because that was the name of the game, for me at least. And investment banking, wow, my first year out of college back in 2001, I think with bonus, I must have got paid something like $80,000, which is a lot of money for a kid right out of college.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So I was very happy, independent. And then my dad, who worked for a company in the diamond industry for pretty much his whole career, reached the retirement age, but he didn't want to retire. And so at the age of 54, he actually became an entrepreneur. And when he became an entrepreneur, like a good son, I thought I should leave my job and help and support my father. So I left the investment banking world and I joined him, but I would consider myself an employee and he was the boss. We had our ups and downs. It was an interesting relationship because when you're father's son and then you become boss and employee, it's filled with its roller coaster moments. Let's just keep it at that.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, I decided that I also wanted to start my own business. So that's when I actually started ResNet World, which is the hospitality business. We started that in a few years afterwards, and it's still running today. And then along the way, we realized that
Saahil, how do you decide to go to launch ResNet? What was it? That's what I'm most curious too. When you speak about your businesses, I want to know what was it that kind of prompted you to pick up these different industries?
Sure. So I was actually I was also doing some real estate because real estate, I had a lot of friends in real estate. And so even though I was in diamonds, I was doing real estate work and I was, I enjoyed it because that was my space. It wasn't where my father was my boss. I was my own boss and I was, doing well, did some really good deals. And then 2008 happened. And so when 2008 happened, pretty much everything I worked on just went for shits. I mean, it was dead. But what happened was when I was in that space, I met someone in the real estate world who said, listen, you live in Dubai, but by then I was living there. He said, I've come across this product where if we put this solution into air conditioning systems, it's like removing the cholesterol from the equivalent inside the pipes. It'll make them more efficient. Dubai, hot, lots of air conditioning, sounds like a great business. And I was like, yes, let's do it. Because after having that independence of having my own business and then, losing
you got a taste for it.
I needed something again. And I had the entrepreneurial bug in me. So we started this business. However, in that business, it failed because we weren't a good fit for one another. Now, he was the majority shareholder. I was the minority shareholder. And even though the product had a lot of potential, it was a clash of personalities.
Do you mind sharing what that clash was?
When we started the company, and I think it's always down to communication, right? Or lack thereof. We were both shareholders. And although he owned more, the way I saw it at least was that we were co-founders. But he always treated me like he's the boss and I'm working for him. And so that just didn't register in my head. I go, but I'm not an employee. I'm an employee as well as a shareholder, like you are. You just happen to own more of the company than I do. And so I guess it was a difference of expectations. And again, I'm going to blame it not on him or I'm going to blame it on the fact that we didn't communicate and align ourselves, which led to the breakup. when that breakup happened, the chief operating officer of the company, eventually the company failed. So the chief operating officer came to me and said, listen, I worked at this hospitality company in the US, and they probably, the Middle East is booming in hospitality. I see an opportunity. Do you know anyone who would be interested? Maybe we can broker a deal. And then the more I studied it, I said, why are we trying to broker a deal? We can do it together. But this time round, I made sure that the discussions were had. You
Yeah,
learn
yeah,
from your mistakes, right?
yeah,
We had the
absolutely.
discussions. We made sure that we knew what role each of us play because we were starting this company together as co-founders. And touch wood, till today, we have a wonderful partnership. The only time it went a little rocky was because we agreed that I was the CEO, he was the COO. But at one point, I stepped away and he became the CEO, but I was still getting involved in the company when I shouldn't. And he would tell me, he's like, hey, buddy, this is what we agreed. And I said, you know what? You're right. I'm sorry. I'm taking a step back. So it's just habit, I guess, right? You can't just switch off one day. But luckily, because we were always communicating honestly and openly, we had a solid relationship and we worked it out. And, it's a thriving relationship till today.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the best part about that was that you established that communication from the get-go. It was nice
Absolutely.
and open, so by the time you stepped away as CEO and he stepped in and you kind of were coming back, he was able to say to you, "Hey, that's not what we agreed on." Because you established that communication. If you hadn't, who knows? He would have stayed quiet, things would have boiled over. So again, that communication is key.
Absolutely. So that's how I got into, that entrepreneurial bug, just trying new things. The real estate, even though I got burnt in real estate and I was a bit scared of getting back in, honestly, because of the past experience. However, one thing I realized is that in both the businesses that either myself or my father were running, there can be a bad period. Now, when there's a bad period, then it gets tight on the finances. And so I just attended a session with someone who I forget the name of the speaker, but it was in Dubai. He came, he said, I had one source of income and that disappeared and I was struggling. So he said, from that day forward, I decided I'm going to have multiple sources of income, some active, some passive, that in case anything happens in one or two areas, I know that at least I've got money coming in from other spaces. And I just thought from a financial security standpoint, that made a lot of sense. So my dad and I, we spoke and we decided that we would start taking money out of the business as we were generating some profits and invested into something that doesn't require too much effort. Now, in real estate, it covers a lot. I mean, development is a lot of work. Uh, if you have houses that you rent out, people call you that my light doesn't work, my heating is broken. We're like, we don't want to deal with any of that stuff. And the one area that we identified, which we didn't really know much about, but we just dived right in and kind of learned to swim along the way, was retail. Because in retail, we're just giving them a shop and they make it however they want, and everything inside is their responsibility. Pretty much. I'm just simplifying it, but
Yeah.
there's very little involvement from our side. And they sign a 3 to 5 year lease. So you speak to them. I always tell them when I sign, I say, if I speak to you at the time of renewal, that means we have a very good relationship. That means nothing went wrong.
Yeah.
But I love that because the amount of effort we had to put in was minimal. So it didn't disrupt the operating businesses. And at the same time, it was bringing in rental revenue. So we knew that at least we had some sort of stable income. And then after that, we started investing in the stock market, in the index, in bonds. I mean, I now have multiple sources of income just in case things go sideways. And these multiple sources of income are not even from one country. It's in 3 different regions of the world. So that way, if one region is suffering, I know the other 2 should be okay. And if the whole world is suffering, then I'll have a lot of people by my side because we're all suffering
Yeah.
together.
You'll have a lot of company.
I'll have a lot of company. But the reason, and to answer how I got into the speaking and coaching and writing is, this is an interesting one. In 2016, I went on a trip with some fellow entrepreneurs. I think we were 6 or 7 of us. And we went on this trip. It was a retreat, and we all agreed to 2 words, which were no judgment. Now, at that point, I just felt this huge weight lifted off my shoulders. I didn't have to pretend to be someone I'm not. I could just be me. And the only way I can describe the next 4 days, John, is euphoric and liberating. And just to give you an example, we were having dinner one night at a restaurant where it's a very lively place. They have these acts while you dine. So they had a magician, they had a singer, they had someone doing acrobats, illusionist, various acts. I think they had about 6, 7, 8 acts while we were having dinner. We were sitting right next to the stage where I could literally put my hand on the stage. I was right next to it. And the last act was a group of dancers that came on. And there's one girl, she looks at me and she says, "Come up." Now, the previous me, afraid of what others think, the fear of judgment, how will I look, what will others say, blah, 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 blah. I would have made any excuse not to go up. But I said, no judgment. And I love to dance, by the way. I forgot to mention that. So I went up and I just felt free. I didn't give a crap what anyone thought. I'm dancing away. And at the end of the song, she did something that just blew my mind. She wraps her arms around my neck and flings her legs up. And I'm just thinking, oh my God, I have to catch her. Now, luckily for me, I did.
Split-second decision.
Yeah, literally. I think it was more reaction and through shock than anything. But I caught her and I started thinking afterwards. I said, this girl just met me and she had more confidence in me than I sometimes have in myself. I mean, just think about that. So as I'm flying back from this retreat, I wanted to share some of these amazing, liberating, euphoric moments with my wife. So I asked the air hostess, I said, can you give me a pen and paper? So I started writing down. And as I started writing, I noticed tears are starting rolling down rolling down my cheeks. I'm thinking to myself, what's going on? Like, it's not like you to cry. But I didn't want to go through the whole thing like boys don't cry and all that garbage. I said, just let the emotions flow.
Yeah.
Let the emotions flow. And as I let it flow and I started reflecting, I said, if this is the guy that I really am, when I don't give 2 hoots about what anyone else thinks, then who the hell is this guy that I'm going back to? Because that's not me. That's a man who's filled with fear. Fear of what others think. And is constantly wearing a mask of people pleasing. Yeah. And I'm going to say there's nothing wrong in pleasing others, but not when it harms you.
Yeah, exactly.
Not when it's harming you.
That's a major point I always like to make. And it echoes here. I think so many of us, we started off on a path of people pleasing. So we did certain things. Then you get to a point where it's not healthy for you, or you make those realizations like you did coming home. And the thing is, what you do for others may not necessarily change. They're still going to benefit from you. You're still going to serve them. It's what you're taking away from it and why you're doing it that changes. But yeah, you could be doing the same thing, but one is people pleasing and one is who somebody had put it as kind of like an overabundance of what you have available. You're sharing it with them, but people pleasing has come up a lot. So I love that you bring up that point that you have this discovery about yourself.
Yeah, and it got me thinking that I want to be more like that guy that I just was for the last 4 days. And so I came home, I started making a list of what weight am I carrying? because I felt like I was just carrying this. I told you I felt free and lighter when I removed the weight of judgment. But when I went back, I'm like, I'm clearly carrying something. What is it that I'm carrying? And I just made a list. There's a lot of things: emotionally, mental, physical, you name it. There was a lot. And so I started to do research. I started to get in touch with some of the best out there, trial and error. I did everything. But the one thing that I have to say is I made myself the first priority. Because as a people pleaser, the tendency was not to put myself the first priority because that's deemed as selfish. But
Yeah.
I realized that when I make myself the first priority, and we've all heard this before, when my cup is overflowing, like you said, I'm in abundance. I'm giving energy because I have so much of it.
Yeah.
Right. And so I stopped making other people priority. I said, I am my first priority. These are the things I've identified. Let me go out there and figure out how to get rid of this clutter. Because as I'm climbing my mountains of success, if I have excess weight, it's slowing me down. It's much harder. And I may not even make it to the summit. But as I
You'll
identified,
need more oxygen,
oh, I need a lot more oxygen.
right?
So
So
as I
Sahil,
started,
for
yeah,
that trip that you took, the whole no judgment thing, how did that even come up? Like, where did that come from? It's incredible to hear about this story of, 7 of you going away. It's like, okay, what kind of relationship did they have that whoever brought up, hey, listen, while we're here, while we're away, no judgment. So how did that even come up?
sure.
Do you
So
remember?
the organization through which this happened is called the Entrepreneurs Organization, which I'm a member of. And these were people where we came together who I don't even know that well. And we realized that if we want to get to know each other well, we can't be wearing masks. And so one of the common, um, traits of the organization, like some, I'm not going to call it the rules, but it's just the way of being within the organization is no judgment. Because if you have no judgment, if you're not wearing a mask, I get to see and hear the real John, and John gets to hear and see the real Sahil, and then we can build a real, authentic relationship, as
Yeah.
opposed to based on whatever it is that we're trying to.
Facades.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so we just all said, listen, let's not go somewhere and try to, and especially when it's 7 guys, with their chest out, like, look at me, I'm so great.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
of ego comes in. We said, no, that's not going to help. Let's just be who you are. We're not judging. We're coming from a place of curiosity because I want to know you, the real you.
So I'm curious about the next steps you took after that. And at the same time, the mountaineering. So did this happen around the same time? Was the mountaineering before this revelation of yours? Whichever one you want to tackle. I just don't want to lose sight of the mountaineering.
Yeah, no, the mountaineering, funnily enough, it was when I was still in university. One of my friends who we lived together for 3 years, his older brother one day comes and goes, "We should climb Everest." I'm like, that's a big task. It's a big mountain. I don't know. How about we start with the base of Everest,
Yeah.
which is still high, by the way. That's close to 20,000 feet. I think it's like 18,500 feet or something.
Wow.
Okay. So he planted the seed. And then I always had it in me that, like a bucket list kind of thing, that I would love to climb a mountain one day. So after marriage, when we kind of enjoyed our time together as parents with no kids, and we decided that now we want to enter the next phase, I told my wife, I said, sweetie, I've always had this dream and I just want to do it before we have children, because once we have kids, I don't know which direction life is going to take us and if we'll have the ability to even go. So I did the research. We needed factoring in, weather can go wrong and all that kind of stuff. I factored in we needed about 3 weeks in Nepal. And she said, I'll do it as well. I was like, okay, great. So the two of us and one of my closest friends, because we emailed, back then Facebook was at least for our age group, was one of the popular social sites. I messaged a whole bunch of people, and people came back with some good jokes, like, do they have hot towel racks? Otherwise, I can't come. Or do they have hair dryers? And I understood that basically meant no. But one of my close, very dear friends said yes. So the three of us embarked on this journey, and it was beautiful. We spent time with Mother Earth. We spent time with each other, uninterrupted, and time with ourselves in our heads. And what I didn't know is when you go to the mountains, it's possible that you get bit by the mountain bug. And when you get bit by the mountain bug, you have this disease where you just want to keep going back. And that's what I caught. I caught that disease and I kept wanting to go back. Now, we had children. I kept saying I'm going to go back. When I came back from this retreat, I said, Saahil, you've been talking about, because this was 2016, we did Everest Base Camp 2010. We've had 2 kids already. When I came back, I said, you keep talking about climbing a mountain, but it's just lip service. You're not doing it. So there and then, I asked my wife, I said, look, our kids are old enough, we can leave them with the grandparents. I'm thinking of Kilimanjaro now, the tallest in Africa. What say you? And she said, yeah, let's do it. So we signed up, made the payment. So now it's locked, and then we climbed
How
that.
high is that, Saahil?
So, I'm going to go in meters if that's okay, because I'm not so good with feet, but in meters, it's 5,895 meters high, which is higher than the base of Everest. And then the year after that, we did Elbrus, which is the tallest mountain in Europe, which is on the European side of Russia. The year after that, we did Chopicalqui in Peru, which is the hardest mountain we've done till date. It was more technical, like with ice axes and going up walls and stuff. And then COVID happened, so we had to take a little bit of a break. Before COVID, was it? I'm getting my dates. Yeah, it was COVID. And then after that, we did Pico de Orizaba in Mexico, the tallest mountain there. So, and then I've also done a lot of small mountains because I do retreats and I take people up mountains as well now. So I just, and I ski a lot as well. So I just always look at an excuse to go back to the mountains because it's so beautiful. It's peaceful. I get to reflect a lot. I get time in my head, uninterrupted. I bond with people. I bond with Mother Earth. And I realize how beautiful the world is that we live in.
So you keep saying
the cities.
You keep saying Mother Earth. So obviously that demonstrates a respect and affinity for Earth. Did you always have that? Did you get that from your parents? When did you get that attitude that, again, affinity for, what we have?
When you see the beauty that is, and I've been very fortunate to be able to travel to lots of places around the world. I mean, I'm really blessed in that way from a young age. When you see how beautiful the world is that we live in, the natural beauty, whether it's the Amazon, the seas, the beaches, the mountains, you want to protect it. Because you want your kids to be able to enjoy that. You want your grandkids to be able to enjoy that. And there's no planet B. There's just this Earth that we have. We haven't discovered any other place where we can live. Will we one day? I don't know. People are exploring Mars. When is that going to happen? I don't know. But right now, what I do know is we just have this one planet.
Yeah.
And if we don't take care of it, you see what's happening. More extreme weather conditions. You see things getting destroyed. Is that sustainable? And that brings me back to sustainability. So whenever someone mentions the word sustainability, people by default go to the environment. But sustainability just means that whatever that is you do, it's something that can continue forever and ever and ever by you or the next generation or the generations to come. And I don't believe that we're living in a way that is sustainable right now. So I do my part. I share, I talk about it. I buy products that don't have chemicals, so they don't, go into the waterways. I support small businesses that make soaps and shampoos and all that stuff. So I'm supporting a small entrepreneur. I'm not destroying Mother Earth. And now with the internet, oh my God, you can find everything, everything. So I feel it's our duty as citizens of planet Earth to make sure that we take care of it because it's our home. Don't you take care of your own house? The same way this
Yeah.
is our home. We have to take care of it.
Okay, so thank you for all of that. Thank you for sharing all of that. So now you're coming back from this trip, you're making your list, you're crying, the tears are there, you're questioning who you've been versus who you just were, open and free. So where does that lead you?
That leads me to just removing clutter at all levels. I'm just going to give a couple of examples so that it makes more sense.
Sure.
I told you before I was a gadget freak, right? So that just meant I accumulated a lot of gadgets, but I also accumulated a lot of stuff in general. I just decided one day, there's a lot of stuff here that I haven't used in a long time. So I had a rule. If you haven't used something within 6 months, and it's not something which is for special occasions. Like, for example, I might have a really dressy suit, which I only wear at weddings and cocktail parties or stuff like that, right? That's not something that you may wear every 6 months, but it qualifies to keep. But I mean, there's not many items I own that fall in that category. Most of them, I have things and I'm just not using them. No one's using them and they're just hanging around. Now, what I read at one place is everything that you own occupies space in your head, rent free. Now, what kind of a business owner are you, or a business person are you, where you allow to store stuff in your head rent free that gives you no benefit whatsoever? So I said, okay, if it's not giving me benefit, it needs to go. But then that human tendency comes in that just when you're about to give it up, but I could do this. I could use it. It can come in useful in the future. And for the things that fell in that category, I put it in a box. And I said, if I open this box within the next 6 months, I'll keep it. If I don't, I'm not even going to open the box. I'm just going to give the whole box away. I don't want to go through this rigmarole again. So I went through everything that I own, clothes, items, this, that, and oh my God, I filled suitcases. And as I started giving the things away or selling them, depending on the value, I started to get lighter. It's like space opened up in my head. And now with this new empty space, I could fill it with whatever I wanted. Things that bring me joy, things that excite me, whatever it is for me. And when I was giving it away, first I'm like, but I spent a lot of money on this, blah, blah, blah. But then I thought, and I saw when I gave it to somebody, myself, with my own hands, I saw the smile it put on them. And it was usually someone who was not as privileged as I was. So I said, wow, I'm actually decluttering for smiles. I'm giving this object that I'm not using anymore, whatever it is, clothing or otherwise. And someone else is now using it, making good use of it. They're happy, they're smiling, joy in their life. And in my life, it had no meaning.
Yeah.
So what a great way to create positivity.
What was your thinking to arrive at decluttering? Obviously, coming back from that trip, you're assessing everything. How did you arrive at? I know we've talked about priorities. You have to think about what your peaks are. So that's prioritizing things. So how did it come into cluttering? Was it just so that you could allow other things to rise? How did you get to that idea of really addition by subtraction?
Sure. It was very simple. As a mountaineer, when you're carrying weight on your back and you're climbing, every 100 grams, not a kilo, not 5 kilos, even 10 grams over hours and hours and hours, it makes a difference. And I met this one ex-army individual, and he said he actually helped me to refine it further. He said, Saahil, it's not even what gives you benefit. It has to give you enough benefit to be worthy of being in your backpack. So let me explain that. If I'm climbing a mountain and I carry 2 bottles of water, there's enough benefit in me carrying the second bottle because it means now I have 2 liters of water to drink. And if I'm on a long journey, the 2 liters, and sometimes I might even have a third, to be honest with you. But if I say, yeah, I might be really thirsty, let me carry 5 or 4, that extra weight doesn't give me enough benefit.
It's like the point of diminishing returns,
Exactly.
if you will.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not giving me enough benefit, and it's in actuality, it's going to probably slow me down. So I said I want to be as light as possible with the weight that I'm carrying, because when I'm lighter and I'm only carrying things that have enough benefit, I can scale my summits of success faster. And I only make 2 exceptions to that rule that don't necessarily give enough benefit. One is just, I might have a picture of somebody in the family or my entire family or a good luck charm, something like that. Small. It's not essential, but it just brings me a lot of joy, so I carry it in there. And the second thing I do is I usually carry one thing which I know most other people may forget, because it encourages me to think about others and not be selfish and only think about myself. And I'll give you a recent example. We actually went on a family holiday and we had to go to a higher altitude, and my mom didn't know how much cold it could get. And I carried an extra layer with me, thinking that someone's probably going to forget and they're going to feel cold. Lo and behold, happens to be my own mother. She was so happy to receive that layer from me. She goes, "Oh, you're such a great son." I said, I just knew it was going to come in handy. Now, it was a tiny bit of extra weight in the grand scheme of things, but I knew it was going to benefit someone else. But I only carry one item like that. Not otherwise, it could end up being a lot. So as I'm lighter, John, it's a lot easier to climb. I need less oxygen, as you pointed out earlier. So if I want to succeed in life and get there faster, I can't carry excess baggage.
So then where does this realization fall in terms of your speaking and coaching and writing? Excuse me.
So as I embarked on this journey and I started to remove a lot of what I deemed as clutter in my life, I started to accelerate, right? And as I was accelerating, my health improved. My clarity and focus improved, which meant I was able to achieve more in less time. So people started to see progress. They saw I was a happier individual. And so they would ask me, "Saahil, what's going on? Share some of this secret sauce." And so I started to share in a small group. A small group became a larger group, became a stage, became international stages, became a book, now a second book, coaching, and became a business. Did I ever think I was going to be a coach and an author? No. It just happened. But it felt good, and it felt fulfilling, and it felt purposeful. Hence why I pursued it, and then I took the necessary courses to become a better speaker. I got certified as a coach through accredited institutions. I did all the base work so that I could serve at a higher level.
Sahil, so for you, does it make sense from your childhood that this is what you're doing? Not that you knew this was where you were gonna end up, not that you knew this was the path you wanted to take, but what from your childhood experiences come out in what you're doing today? How do you reconcile the two?
The only thing that just immediately comes to my mind as you ask that question, and it's such a powerful question, so thank you for asking it, is as a child, I had a lot of joy and happiness in my life. I think we all did. And somewhere along the way, I lost it. I lost it. I don't know why. I'm sure I can come up with a lot of reasons, but whatever the reasons are, I lost it. And when this entered my life, I felt like the inner child woke up again. And it just felt so good. And look, I want to be honest here. I have other businesses, so I didn't have to worry about finances in the beginning because I had my lifestyle covered, whether it was coming through passive income, whether it was coming through the operational businesses that I have. I wasn't worried about putting food on the table. I wasn't worried about paying the school fees. So I did have financial security. But that privilege gave me the confidence and the realization that if I only have this one life, I want to enjoy it. I want it to feel purposeful. I need it to be fulfilling. And so when that inner child woke up again, I said, I'm not going to let this child sleep ever.
I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, it's come up on this series a lot where I've seen so many clients and friends, all of us, that when we kind of go back to who we were as kids, that wonder, that sense of dreaming, just of possibilities, of play, of joy, of fulfillment. When you're a kid, you want to have fun, so it is about you. Uh, it's incredible how that awakens people when they tap into that inner child, because I think so many of us follow that same path where we have that as children. Then we go into education and you have a certain script you have to play and the good student and get a good career, and you kind of lose that creativity, that wonder, that individual personality that you have because now you're part of a group. So it's amazing when somebody can find it and put those words to it too. Like the inner child woke up and I'm not going to let them sleep again. So thank you for sharing that. That's great. That's amazing. I love that. I love that metaphor, that view of a child waking up and just, you don't want to lose them again.
Yeah. And look, I'm not going to pretend like it was easy, right? I found that on this journey, as I was gaining momentum, I also had to face, like every mountain, to get to the summit, you're going to cross peaks and valleys. And of course, it's always great to talk about the peaks, but you have to go through the valleys along the way. And I went through some very dark moments, and I had to face a lot of realities which I would just ignore or push away, hoping that they would disappear. But at some point, you have to look in the mirror and just accept what is and work on it. If it's something you're not happy with, then change it. And so I had to go through some dark moments, and I lost people along the way because who they became a friend with or was associated with wasn't really the real me. And that also includes my wife, by the way. She didn't leave me, but it did cause, thank God.
Yeah.
But she did tell me one day that I don't recognize you anymore. And that was hard. It was very hard to hear because I felt so good. The momentum was strong. I was evolving at a very rapid pace.
Oh, she meant that for the better. Now
No, she meant it that I just don't recognize you anymore. Like you're not the guy that I married. So that's what I mean, that it's it sounds great when I'm sharing all the pluses, but you have to go through the tough moments. And it got to the point where I even asked myself, I said, Saahil, is it worth it? Like, just go back to being whoever fake version of you that was, because at least then you're happy together. But I said to myself, wait a second. I'm not abusive. I'm not on illegal substances. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not gambling money away. I'm not womanizing. I'm not checking any of the bad boxes, or the boxes. I'm not going to call it bad. That's being judgmental, but I'm not checking any of the boxes that can affect the relationship that I have. So why am I scared?
Yeah.
And then I asked myself, I said, Saahil, if you had to approach this from the lens of love instead of the lens of fear, how would you approach it? Because ultimately, I have a very simple philosophy. The decisions I make, are they taking me closer to peace or closer to regret?
Oof. Yeah.
And I knew if I went back to who I was, I would be taking myself closer to regret.
Yeah.
And I realized, and I go back to the problem we discussed earlier on, it was communication. I was evolving, but I wasn't. It's like a train track, right? I mean, you have two parallel tracks, but if you don't have the connectors in between as you move forward, if you're not connecting, you start to veer off in different directions. And that's what happened to us. Is it her fault? No. Is it my fault? No. But collectively, it was a fault. It affected our marriage. But when we started having honest and open communication with one another and co-created a safe space and the rules of engagement of how we would communicate, which, by the way, I now use this for all communication challenges I have challenges I have with people. We started to understand each other better. We started to see things from each other's perspectives. We started to align ourselves better. And now we're at the opposite end of the spectrum in our marriage.
Thank you for sharing that, Sahil. Sahil, what do you consider your superpower? I've heard a lot of great attributes, but if there's one that you could point to that's unique to you, no one can take away from you, that's your thing. What is your superpower? What do you consider it?
So when I discovered my purpose in life, it's a word called ahimsa. Ahimsa in Sanskrit, which is an ancient Indian language, no longer used anymore or very rare. It means non-violence. Now, I don't like the word. I don't like the English version because it's like two negatives, right? But it's a very beautiful word. But it's not love. It's kind of love, right? And so what I believe my superpower is that I pause and I always ask myself, are you operating from a place of love or are you operating from a place of fear? Because non-violence is not just towards others, it starts with you. When someone gets angry, I say, look, for whatever reason you're getting angry, I'm not even here to judge whether the other person is right or wrong, but you're harming yourself right now.
Yeah.
That's all I care about. You're my client. I'm just letting you know you're harming yourself right now. And why would you want to harm yourself? So as a result of pausing and operating from a place of love than fear, I found that I've become a very good listener because now rather than judging people, I come from a place of curiosity that I want to understand you.
Yeah.
To see why or how you do what you do.
Yeah, I love that because I think so many of the world's problems now stem from fear. Like, what can be taken away from me? What do I stand to lose? Um, just so much, so much. And it's not that those of us that operate from abundance or love or anything, it's not that we don't have those fears, but I love that clarity that you just shared about in any given moment before I make a decision, I think about which way I'm operating. You're catching your primal instinct to react and asking yourself that question. That's a great clarity in the moment. I wish more of us had that in the world just because all it takes is that split second just to ask that and be honest with the response. Um, but it is incredible the difference in the way you perform, the way you react when it's based in fear. What can I lose versus in love? Like there comes a confidence with that. I am strong enough. I am confident in myself that I don't fear losing anything, and I want to I want to share some good energy. So again, I wish more people had that because I think it's costing us too much in the world. So I appreciate you sharing that.
And I want to add one more thing to what you said because I love the perspective you just shared. And that is when you operate from a place of fear, it's not necessarily something that's part of your belief system. So I look at that as more temporary.
Mm-hmm.
Versus when you're operating from a place of love, it's part of your belief system.
That's a
And that
good
makes
point.
it more long term and sustainable. So again, it comes back to the sustainability angle that when you operate
Yeah.
from a place of fear, it's not sustainable because you may do it as a result of a fear of a loss, but you may not agree with the decision. You just don't want to deal with what may happen,
Yeah.
which is not sustainable.
Yeah. When you holding on to any fear, holding on to any anxiety, like I've spoken about this on here very briefly, my anxiety in life, it's always been there, but not dealing with it properly, it's this energy that's always there and it's costing me. It's
Mhm.
like you going up the mountain carrying something that serves no purpose instead of opening up your pack, looking at it and dealing with it. Um, just my little mountaineering metaphor that I've never done any of that, but that's what comes to mind now.
Well, you've
Sahil,
planted the seed. You might get the mountain bug as well soon,
no, 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 no. I'll start with like a golf course nearby first before anything like that. Um, Sahil, one more question before we jump into your book. And there was another one I meant to ask you while you were speaking. Something you said jumped out, but it'll come back to me. Before we jump into your book, what does leadership mean to you? How do you define great leadership? What does it look like? Thoughts?
There's so many amazing people that I've come across in my life who've defined it in ways that I'll never be able to define it as well. So I'm going to give them the credit, and I'm going to share some of the learnings that I've had. Leadership for me um, is really creating future leaders. And I think it was Peter Drucker, who's a management guru. He said the leader of the past knows how to tell. So very, very much, I know better. I say you do. The leader of the future will know how to ask. And whether it's, I've met when I've learned this from Marshall Goldsmith, and I was with Alan Mulally, who was the former CEO of Ford, and
Mm-hmm.
he was very much following that principle, and I believe that was one of the many reasons for his phenomenal success over there. Is he surrounded him? He said, "I'm not the expert in the role that you are responsible for. I don't have the answer." And he would ask them the questions, and then they would come up with the answers. And if he gave a directive based on something he doesn't have knowledge, what are the chances of success?
Yeah.
Probably not very high. But if he's asking the expert in that field to come up with a solution, the chance of success drastically increases. And it's actually, something just popped into my head. It reminds me again of the mountains when I do the retreats and I get these leaders come. They're all in their environment. They're in control. Like they really have control. They want to control a lot of things. When they come on the mountain, they completely let go because they have no clue what is right and what is wrong. So they depend on the guides. They depend on me as the facilitator. They depend on the crew that are preparing various things to make their journey safer, better, more enjoyable. And imagine if you use that analogy in your own workspace where you go in and go, I don't want to control the environment. I'm going to ask and listen and see how talented your pool actually is. Because that's what happened to me. I forcefully had to shift because I didn't want to do everything because it was going to lead me to burnout. And then I realized that my team had brilliant ideas. And if I had to really hit my humility hard, was they actually made some decisions that were better than the ones I would have made. So hats off to them.
Yeah. And that example of showing up and letting go speaks to the fear versus the curiosity, where if you show up with fear, you don't want, oh, I don't want people to think that I'm not capable, I can't figure things out by myself, versus that curiosity of just asking, especially the specialists. It's always reassuring. It always, even before I went into the leadership field, even before I studied it, any of that, it was always reassuring when somebody in authority and leadership, management, supervision, whatever, asked questions.
Mm.
But it was the exception rather than the rule. They looked you in the eye, they asked you a question, what do you think? Exception more than the rule, because there were so many other leaders that felt that wasn't what a leader was supposed to do, that a leader was supposed to, like Peter Drucker said, tell instead of ask. So anytime you come across somebody that asks a question genuinely, looks you in the eye, considers your specialization, your personality, what you bring to the table, it's incredible what you can awaken with just a question to anybody, whether they're the authority, whether they're a novice. Just one simple question can open up just so much in that person and bring them to life, bring out their specialty.
And I just want to add one more thing is, as a leader, at least for me, I don't want to make too many decisions. The fewer decisions I make, the better it is for me, because when the important ones come along, I am full of energy. I don't have decision-making fatigue, and I can make a much better decision. So the decisions that can be made by other people, because they have been empowered, they have the knowledge, by all means, let them make the decision.
Yeah. And a leader can
When the
work
big one
on,
comes,
yeah. And a leader can take their energy and instead work on a vision, work on innovation. Where are we going now? Instead of just kind of always managing what is, leading to what could be. All right, Sahil, now let's dive into your book. Why don't you introduce the book and how the book came to be and the timeline of the story that you've shared? I can see the buildup of the stages and everything, but why don't you introduce your book and how it came to be? What was that pivot point that said, okay, now I got to commit all this to a book?
sure. As I started speaking on stages in different countries around the world, I realized that very few people had access to me. Now, sure, you can go on social media, you can go on my LinkedIn profile, you can go on YouTube, you can go on Insta, whatever. But that doesn't give you the depth of the methodology. It gives you snippets. And so I said, if I really want to serve, I have to provide something that is easily accessible to a wider audience. And so I came across this amazing company that manages speakers, Right Selection, based in Dubai. They introduced me to this gentleman who runs a publishing. It's self-publishing, but they take you through the process called Passionpreneur, like entrepreneur, but Passionpreneur. And so sometimes it's just people you meet. And I always had it in my head that one day I'll write it. But when I met him, I realized that why not now? And so I hired their services. They provided me with a writing coach, an editor, the works, because I can write the content perhaps, but a lot of stuff goes behind the scenes when putting a book together. But I realized I had to serve a wider audience. I wanted to make it accessible at a low price point, right? Because if someone pays for me to speak, it costs a lot of money. And I'm only speaking to the audience that's paying me. But what about someone who says, oh, I've heard about you, I want to know more? Well, okay, now here's a book. So that's how I got into writing a book. And what I didn't realize was the book added a lot more structure in my speaking and in my coaching methodology. Because it's one thing when you're on stage, you can kind of veer it in the direction you want to go. But when you write a book, it has to be logical. It has to make sense, logical steps, which takes you slowly up. And it has to be written in a way that's crystal clear. So the book gave me better structure. And I went in thinking that this is a great book, it's going to serve other people. But what I didn't realize in the process is the first person the book served was me. Because I did a lot of reflecting when I was writing it as well about my own life. It's one thing to know things in your head, but when you write it down and it's in front of you in black and white and in a structured format, oh my goodness, it propelled me to the next level in terms of my own growth.
Yeah, it's funny. You jumped the question. Typically, that's my next question is how did the book change you? Which is fine. That's great. That's fine. So how did you take the reader through the book? How did you lay out the book? Obviously, you talked about how strategic it is, logical it is. So what does that path look like? Whether it's sections of the book, chapters, how do
Sure.
you make that argument for what you want to share with your reader?
Sure. So the first chapter really introduces the concept of why it's important to declutter, right? We talked about that earlier. It's not about adding things. It's also important to eliminate things from your life so that you can scale your metaphorical mountains faster. The second chapter really focuses more on me as a person, my journey, what I went through. I want it to be authentic. I want it to be vulnerable. I don't want to sound like do this, do that. I wanted people to understand that I'm sharing all this because I went through pain and I was very open and vulnerable about the pain I went through so that they could understand where I'm coming from. And hopefully they took it as he's sharing so that we can benefit and don't have to go through the pain that he did.
Yeah.
So I was vulnerable about it because I didn't want to come across as just someone giving directive and telling people telling people what to do, because nobody likes being told what to do. Let's be honest. And then I said, okay, well, as an engineer, that's when my engineering mind kicked in. It has to be logical and it has to be, a structure. So I looked at the world of decluttering and I said, what are the areas that I would want the reader to declutter, and how can I put the things that I've learned into sections? So the first section is really decluttering the mind. I mean, ultimately everything is linked to the mind, but it really focuses on the mind. And it comes from the place that, and I think it was Buddha who said this, what you think you are. When you think something, it evokes an emotion, a feeling. That leads to an action. Those repeated actions become habits. And that's you. So if you want to change who you are, it has to start with the thought. And so when I have sometimes my clients telling me, the leaders that I work with, I'm not good at, I would then reaffirm it. I would say, yes, you're right. You won't be good at, because that's what you're thinking. And we talk about the two wolves, because I read this story about, we have these two wolves in our head. One is not serving you, it's pulling you down. The other one is elevating you. So one might be things like hatred and jealousy and comparison and ego. The other one is love, empathy, compassion, joy. And they're always battling in our heads, always, all day long. And then, the story goes that the grandson asks the grandfather, like, which wolf wins? To which the grandfather replies, the wolf you feed. So I'm always asking them, rephrase. When I hear them feeding the wolf that's not serving them, I say rephrase. Because even the words have energy, your thoughts have energy. Is it pulling you up or is it dragging you down?
Was it Henry Ford that said whether you think you can or you can't, you're right, or something to that effect?
I mean, it sounds right.
It sounds right. It's something to that effect. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're correct, because similar to what you're sharing here.
Yeah, absolutely. So I focused on a bunch of things that were focused on removing clutter from the mind. That was the first section of the book.
Sahil, let me just jump in right here because I remember the question I had for you before. In your bio, it mentions ancient wisdom. So, what is your interest in that? What made you call to mind ancient wisdom? How did that come about? How did you infuse that into your work? Where did that interest begin?
Ancient wisdom. So it's a long answer, but I'm gonna slim it down. If you look at religion, the major religions in the world, they've been around for a long time. It's not current knowledge. There's a lot of ancient knowledge in there. And for some reason, and it's not just ancient wisdom from the religions, it's also philosophers.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people along the way thought, I know better, so I'm going to do what I think is better. But when you look at some of these texts, whether it's some of these religious scriptures, whether you look at these ancient philosophers, you will read things that existed thousands of years ago, which now might have a fancy name for it, like intermittent fasting. And they're like, oh, it's something new. I'm like, no, it's not. It was around thousands of years ago. It's just someone came up with it and then said you eat for 8. Eat for 8 and don't eat for 16. Which,
Yeah.
by the way, also is, I'm not a big fan of putting all these hard boundaries because it doesn't work for every body type. And that kind of goes into my next chapter, the next section of the book, which is decluttering the body. But coming back to this, there are a lot of scriptures, whether it's religious or non-religious, that have a lot of wisdom, and they're just being termed as different things today, and or people are now discovering them again, but they've always existed. So I'm a big believer that we have these amazing minds that have been alive through the centuries. Why are we ignoring them? Why are we ignoring them?
Was that interest peaked recently? Has it always been there?
It actually peaked when I was on the quest to discover myself and find my purpose. That's when I started reading. I said, why am I closing my mind? Let me just be open to anything. And
Yeah.
I just started picking things up that made their way to me. Maybe someone gifted it to me. Maybe it was always in my library and I just never paid attention to it. So I started reading all sorts of things, and I realized that you see these common patterns that have been happening. They just label them differently or slightly different versions of them. But mankind have been doing some of these rituals, or with reason. It's not just a ritual for the sake of doing a ritual, with reason, for years, for not even years, for centuries.
Yeah.
So let me understand them a little bit better. And I've just scratched the surface. There's so much to learn and discover. Yeah, I actually know very little. If you look at all the knowledge in the world, I know 0
Oh, yeah,
point,
yeah.
lots of zeros and a 1 at the end, % of it. But the point was, I realized that, again, coming from a place of curiosity, I wanted myself to become more like a sponge. I want to absorb. I don't want to pretend that I know everything and my bucket's full, because then I can't absorb anything and I can't learn anything.
Yeah,
That's
when
where
you
the
have
ancient wisdom came about.
okay, yeah. Yeah, when you have that curiosity and you're a sponge, it's like, each of these conversations makes me more curious for the next one because there's just so many people out there to learn from, even if they're in similar fields. Their stories, their vernacular, their tone, everything is just so individual to that person. So thank you for sharing that. And I'm sorry, back to the book. I think we're on chapter 2.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing on the curiosity.
Sure.
If you stop thinking of yourself as better than, which, by the way, I'm guilty of as well. I'm not going to pretend that I'm Mr. Perfect. But when I approach it from, I want to learn from the individual, whether it's the person driving the taxi, whether it's a farmer that I come across when I'm on the mountains who's a goat herder, it doesn't matter. But when I enter that conversation from a place of curiosity, there's always something to learn.
Absolutely. Yeah, one of the benefits that I've taken from this series, I've always been a curious person, but this series really, my conversations are just better. I'm listening more. I'm asking about people more, not just the small talk, but really seeing people. And again, It doesn't matter if you're the janitor or the CEO. So I love that curiosity for everyone that's out in the world. They're just part of our community.
Absolutely. So coming back to the book, the second section focuses on decluttering the body. Now, this body that we have is amazing. I mean, it's a feedback machine. It's constantly giving us messages. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I need nutrition. I have pain in this area. But again, for whatever reason, in my case, as well as many of the clients I work with, they stop listening to their body. I got to push through it. I've got these deadlines I have to meet. Forget lunch, it's not important. I can name lots of things where we're not respecting our body. But the body is a machine. And the better you take care of this machine, the better the output. And I'm not going to say stuff like eat better, sleep better, exercise more. How many times have you heard that? A million? It's kind of getting boring, right? Hearing the same messages again and again.
Prescription for everybody, yeah.
But what I do say, because ultimately, it's like I said with the intermittent fasting, 8-16. Why 8-16? Why not 7-7? I mean, 7. No, what am I?
17?
Yes, 17. Why not 9-15? Why is it 8-16? And I see people suffering for that last 1 hour sometimes. And it's not even that it has to be 8-16 every day. Sometimes your body can do it, some days it can't. But the point I always tell people is just pause and just listen to what your body is saying. Just do a body scan from head to toe. Just listen. What is it telling you? Because it's constantly giving you signals. If you're not listening, that's not your body's fault. That's your fault. So the body is an amazing machine. And I tell people, listen to what it's telling you. It's always giving you signs. But the question is, are you listening? So if you can just take a pause, let's say once a day, just do a scan from head to toe. What are you hearing? A lot of people start to discover, oh, there's a pain here. Let me address it. Or I'm hungry, or I require fuel. I'm not getting enough sleep. Whatever it is, but your body is telling you, stop following all these folks who are giving you these prescriptions, because we are all unique and different. 8 hours of sleep, no sleep. How many things have you keep hearing from different folks? Do what's right for you. And you can only know that if you listen to what your body is saying.
Yeah.
Because it's a constant feedback machine. So I'm not the one who's going to tell you, hey, eat blueberries because of this. I'm not saying they're bad, by the way. I love blueberries. I'm not going to be the one that...
What do you have against antioxidants?
Yeah, but that's not the only solution.
I get your point. I get your point. You're not prescriptive about
how many hours. Do this, do that. I mean, come on. We're all so different. And not only are we different, who I am today and what I do today, I'm not going to be able to do maybe 10 years from now. I'm going to have to switch my gears a bit because my body is different. And the body is now going to say, I need more of this or less of this or whatever it is. But if I'm not listening to my body and I'm doing something just because people said push through it, who cares if you don't get enough sleep or this or that? Guess what? At some point, the body's going to say, screw you. Now this is done. And now you've got some illness. Yeah. It's just not going to let you function at the rate that you would like.
Okay. Next in the book, or what's the next section?
The next section in the book focuses on decluttering people.
Oof.
Now, this one, the title sometimes gets confusing because people assume, which is perhaps rightfully so, that it's about getting rid of people in your life. And maybe a few people do need to be eliminated from your life. Doesn't mean they're bad people. It just means they're not good people for you. Okay? Let's make that clear.
Yeah.
But when I say declutter people, what I'm really referring to is the gap that has been created between you and someone you care about over time. And that relationship, for whatever reason, is not in a good space. And by eliminating this clutter that's been created between the two of you, the relationship can become strong again. So just to give you an example, and a lot of people who are in a relationship can probably relate to this, is having an argument over messaging.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
Now, here's the thing that goes horribly wrong. And I'm going to give you a 7-word sentence. And I want you to think about what it means. I never said he stole my money. Now, purposely, I said it in monotone because I didn't want to emphasize a word. But here's the reality. It's a 7-word sentence. Depending on the word that I emphasize, the meaning changes. So this 7-word sentence has 7 different meanings. Now, when you're having a dispute or an argument with someone on text, and you've written 50 words, the ones you were emphasizing in your head when you wrote it, are you sure that that's what they understood when they read it? Or did they emphasize a different word? Now, in the sentence that I gave, the 7-word sentence, you have a 1 in 7 chance. That's the probability of them getting it right. Those are pretty shitty odds. Is that how you run a business? Where you go, 1 in 7 chance? Yeah, let's go for it. You don't.
Yeah.
So why are you doing it with your relationships that matter?
Yeah.
And why do you think that clutter is being created between the two of you? It's because what you wrote, they assumed something. An assumption is rarely correct, statistically. And that just created more distance. Now, I'm just giving you a simple example that everyone can relate to.
Yeah.
But there are many things that happen in relationships, whether it's with a spouse, whether it's a parent, a child, a friend, a coworker, a boss, someone who works for you, a random individual. But things happen that create clutter in that relationship. And that causes distance. And many times people think, it's small, it'll go away, someone will forget. But over time, that distance just slowly, it gets wider and wider until one day you're scratching your head going, what the hell just happened? Like nothing big happened, but yet we're not as close as we used to be, or the relationship is just not filled with fun and joy anymore.
Yeah. Saahil, thank you for walking us through those chapters. Just to be mindful of your time, can you just, instead of diving deep into the remaining sections or chapters, can you just give the titles or what the areas are that remain in the book that you walk the reader through?
Sure. Well, the next one is Decluttering the Material World, which we actually spoke about earlier in the podcast. So I don't need to repeat myself on that, but it's just, if an item is functional or gives you joy, keep it. And if it doesn't, perhaps it can bring someone else joy. And then it just really gets into like a closing and eliminating self-limiting beliefs. So that pretty much sums up the book. It's really identifying what is the baggage you're carrying in all these different areas of life. How can you identify them? And once you've identified them, how do you eliminate them? And once you do that, you feel lighter, you feel better, you can scale your mountains faster. Yes, you'll have to go through some valleys along the way, but you also go through some amazing peaks. But in the long run, you get to your definition of success a lot faster.
Saahil, usually this is where I ask about the lessons that you've taken away from the book. You had mentioned that previously. Is there anything that you wanted to add about how you evolved just from committing all this knowledge to paper, to this book that you've put out?
One big thing that I learned is there's so much to do. Pick one. Don't pick 5. Don't pick 3. Because I don't know about you, but I get excited. I'm like, I'm going to do this and this and this and this. And then I end up doing nothing. So now I've the slightly wiser version of myself says, pick one thing.
Oh, it's so hard. It's
You
so
know,
hard.
you start with one, usually pick something that's a low-hanging fruit. Don't go for Mount Everest on day one. Build that momentum, and then you'll just see you get better at it. You just pick one thing at a time. You get lighter, 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 but you're getting stuff done. But if you try to do 10 things at the same time, you're probably not going to do a very good job, and then you may end up giving up because you just go, I didn't get a very good result. But one, maybe two if you're really wanting to get a little too excited. But at least for me, I just pick one thing at a time.
Yeah. Sahil, you had mentioned you're working on your next book. You don't have to give away the store, but what direction does that book go in? What are you covering in this next one?
Yeah. So in the first one, I don't actually talk about the 7 summits and the definition of success. I'm focusing solely on removing clutter. So the second book, which I'm writing with Dr. Marshall Goldsmith, we talk about what are the summits of success so that people define it for themselves. And then we talk about the behavioral challenges that business owners specifically are facing that are getting in the way from them reaching their summits. And I'm doing we're doing a research project where, a survey has been blasted out. We're collecting a lot of data. So it's not what I think or I believe. It's based on data from over 100 business owners. And we're compiling that together to look at perhaps the top 15 or the top 12. And we're going to highlight those, and then what are the potential solutions to overcome those behavioral challenges? Because ultimately, as a business owner, the traits that got me to this level, it may not be good enough to take me to the next level.
Yeah.
So I have to evolve in order to grow.
Sahil, so obviously we're here for your book today. If you were to come back to describe or share a book that's inspired you, that you obviously haven't written, what book would you pick? What is it that stands out that has left an impression on you, a strong impression?
A book that immediately comes to my mind is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. And the reason it pops up is you may recall a few years ago, everyone was talking about purpose, 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 purpose. And I was just lost. Like I didn't have purpose. And it actually brought me anxiety that I couldn't discover it. But when I read his book, he actually shared a universal life purpose, which just brought me a lot of peace because I accepted it before discovering my deeper purpose. And that purpose that he shared was we all have the same purpose, which is for our soul to leave our body in a better state than it entered it. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, the book is filled with hundreds of nuggets, hundreds.
Yeah, I've heard about that book. I've been hearing about that book for years. I don't know why I haven't gotten it yet, but it's on my list. And that's amazing that you had this, you were anxious about your purpose, read this book, you felt more at peace, and then that's when you find that deeper purpose.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it's incredible how chasing, you can't catch it, but sometimes it's just like, all right, calm down, do your due diligence, do your best work, have a good heart, whatever. It'll, what's bound to happen will happen. It's incredible. You just gave a perfect example of that, being so anxious, but then you find this peace and along it comes.
Absolutely.
Sahil, in wrapping up, what are you up to these days? Is there anything else that you want to share that I might not have asked about? Anything at all? The floor is yours. We covered a lot, I know.
We covered a lot. I usually like to end on a little story, and it's a story that I heard that I just love repeating because it shares such a powerful message. And the story goes like this: a sailor goes to the captain at the end of the month to ask for his pay, to which the captain replies, "Come tomorrow." So the next morning, the sailor is all excited, thinking about how he's going to spend his money, goes back to the captain and says, Captain, can I get my pay?" And the captain looks at him and goes, "Hey, didn't I tell you come tomorrow?" So the reality is, folks, tomorrow never comes. You've learned something that resonated with you in this session today. Take one thing and apply it today.
All great lessons, great stories you told. Again, like you said, there are so many things that we've heard across the centuries, certain pieces of advice or certain paradigms that were always there. There's certain things that we always hear and we've covered them here, but you painted a picture as to why they're meaningful from your own life, from your own journey, no judgment. Would you have been here if that woman had invited you up on stage? Little moments like that, you never know. What if you had said, no, 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 no? I wouldn't have woken you up that way. So I appreciate all the stories, everything you provided. I haven't read your book yet. I look forward to it. Thank you for being here, Saahil.
Thank you for having me.
And again, Sahil's book is Break Free, A Guide to Decluttering Your Life. And if there's anything that I might have missed, we're limited on time, even though I kept him here for over an hour and a half. Sahil's been gracious with his information, his experience, his stories. If there's anything I missed, just let me know and I'll reach out to him, see what kind of insight, guidance, wisdom, all of it I can get back. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.